The galaxy was a vast mosaic of cultures, species, and civilizations, each with its own history, ambitions, and conflicts. Among them, humanity had carved a unique reputation. They were the architects of the Galactic Concord, the greatest peacekeeping coalition in known space. Humans were the galaxy's greatest advocates for peace. Their words carried weight, their diplomacy lauded as a tool of unity, not submission. It was humanity's diplomacy that had resolved centuries-old feuds, ended interstellar wars, and built fragile bridges between once warring factions. Where others turned to war, humans brought words. Where disputes seemed irreconcilable, humans offered solutions. Their motto, "Let us speak, not fight," was etched into the hearts of many species. For centuries, humanity had played the role of mediator, stepping in where others faltered. They were not the most advanced species, nor the strongest, but they possessed a unique blend of compassion and pragmatism that made them indispensable. Wars were averted, treaties signed, and alliances forged under their guidance. To many, humanity's dedication to peace was a beacon of hope. For a few races, the humans' unwavering commitment to peace was an enigma. Why would a species with such potential for strength and influence devote itself to diplomacy and understanding? To many others, it was simply incomprehensible. What drove these beings to champion peace with such intensity remained a mystery, a question whispered in the halls of power across the galaxy. To many others, they were seen as naive idealists, and to a vocal minority, cowards hiding behind their silver tongues. To them, humanity was a race that avoided conflict because they lacked the stomach for war. The Zavan Dominion, a brutal empire of conquest, fell firmly into the latter camp. A warrior race bred for battle, the Zevans viewed peace as the refuge of the weak. Their society thrived on battle and expansion, their leaders chosen by trials of combat, not debate. To them, humanity's reputation was nothing more than a clever disguise for cowardice. And when the Zevans turned their eyes to the fertile worlds of the Solara cluster, it was humanity the Galactic Concord turned to, hoping once more that their words could halt the tide of war. When the Zevans launched their initial attacks on the Solara cluster, humanity responded swiftly. Ambassador Callan Vray was dispatched to the contested region, accompanied by a fleet flying the banners of the Concord. His mission was clear: broker a ceasefire and prevent the outbreak of a full-scale war. Before his mission, Callan studied the Zevans extensively, learning of their deep-rooted pride and their belief in honor through strength. Armed with this knowledge, he arrived at Nithra, a war-torn world in the Solara cluster, under a flag of truce. Callan spoke of coexistence, of shared prosperity, of the countless lives that could be spared if the two sides came to an agreement. He appealed to their logic, their pragmatism, but met resistance at every turn. Finally, as talks neared collapse, Callan made a bold appeal to their honor, invoking their ancient tales of warriors who laid down arms to build enduring legacies. His words struck a chord. The Zevans reluctantly agreed to a temporary ceasefire, and Callan returned to Earth with cautious hope. The announcement of the ceasefire was met with celebration, many hailing it as a diplomatic triumph. But it was not to be. The ceasefire was a carefully orchestrated ruse. While Callan had believed he was laying the groundwork for peace, the Zevans had been using the pause to consolidate their forces. Their honor, it seemed, extended only to their own kind. Merely within a week, the ceasefire ended, and the Zevans launched an all-out assault with terrifying precision. When the Zevans launched their renewed assault, the devastation was immediate and brutal. Entire colonies were incinerated, and millions of lives were lost in the Solara cluster. The calculated ruthlessness of the Zevans' attack left the galaxy reeling. What shocked the other races most was not just the betrayal itself, but the audacity to use humanity's trust and honor against them. Ambassador Callan Vray, upon learning of the Zevans' treachery, resigned for his failure. The Zevans' betrayal sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Humanity, known for their unshakable commitment to peace, had been deceived, and the consequences were catastrophic. Entire colonies in the Solara cluster were annihilated, and millions of lives were lost. In the halls of the intergalactic Concord, debates raged. Some, like the pragmatic Arvathi, called it a wake-up call. If the humans can be deceived, what hope do the rest of us have? A Sulin diplomat, long an ally of humanity, voiced what many dared not say: Do not mistake their patience for weakness. If humanity does act, it will be something none of us are prepared for. The militant Zoltians scoffed. This is what happens when you rely on words instead of strength. But others were uneasy. The betrayal wasn't just an insult to humanity, it was a challenge to the very ideals of peace that bound the Concord together. The galaxy waited in tense anticipation, torn between doubt and fear. Humanity had offered peace and had been thrown aside. What would humanity offer next? To the galaxy's shock, humanity did not turn away from diplomacy. Humanity persisted. We must exhaust every avenue of peace, the leaders declared. War is the failure of diplomacy. Despite the betrayal, they sent another peace envoy to the Zevans. Many were baffled, seeing the decision as either the height of naivety or the ultimate test of diplomacy. They're fools, the Zoltians declared. They are relentless, the Sulin countered. This time, the humans sent Ambassador Elan Vey, one of their most respected diplomats. She was a symbol of humanity's unyielding commitment to peace, a woman who had brokered accords where none thought it possible to the Dominion's homeworld of Zavara Prime. Elan carried with her the hopes of her people and the galaxy. If anyone could broker peace, it was her. As her shuttle departed Earth, millions watched, their hopes pinned on her success. She carried the weight of her people's ideals, knowing full well this was humanity's final attempt at diplomacy with the Dominion. The Zevans received her delegation on their homeworld, Zavara Prime, under a flag of truce. The galaxy watched as the events unfolded, anxious for a resolution. For hours, Elan spoke in the Grand Hall of Crean, the Warlord Supreme. She spoke of the destruction wrought by war, the lives lost, the futures stolen. She implored the Zevans to consider not just their strength, but their legacy. For hours, she spoke with eloquence and passion, pleading for peace. She painted a future of coexistence, where the Dominion could thrive without the need for conquest. But the Zevans had no intention of listening. As Elan concluded her plea, Warlord Crean rose from his throne. His voice was cold and mocking. Your words are hollow. Peace is a lie you tell yourselves to hide your weakness. But we see through it. Your kind does not understand strength. Allow us to teach you. With a single gesture, the Zevan warriors descended. Elan and her delegation were slaughtered where they stood, their blood staining the halls of Zavara Prime. The execution was broadcast across the galaxy, accompanied by Crean's chilling declaration, "Let this be a lesson to all who would speak of peace. There is no room for weakness in this galaxy." The galaxy reeled in horror at the cold-blooded slaughter of Ambassador Elan and her delegation. Her death, broadcasted across every channel, had sent ripples of disbelief throughout the cosmos. Even among the most warlike species, the sanctity of a diplomatic envoy was rarely violated. To murder ambassadors under a flag of truce was to spit on the very foundations of galactic order. After the brutal slaughter of Ambassador Elan, the Zoltians convened with the other Concord members. Though they were allies, their stance was clear and their words cold. "After such an insult, surely humanity will cower," one Zoltian officer remarked. "They'll retreat into their safe zones and hide behind their diplomacy once more, unable to confront the truth of the galaxy." The Sulin diplomat, who had watched humanity's determination through the years, spoke up in defense. "You misjudge them," he said firmly. "Humanity will not retreat. Their commitment to peace is unparalleled, but they will act when they must. We are on the edge of something bigger, something we've never seen before." Humanity's response came swiftly. The Prime Minister of Humanity, Sean Nash, addressed the galaxy. His words were sharp as knives. "We sent an olive branch, and you tore it apart. We offered words, and you answered with blood. You have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. You have not just killed our ambassador, you have murdered peace itself." The galaxy held its breath as he continued. "We hate war. But do not mistake our hatred of war for fear of it. We fear only because of the monster it makes us. But if war is what you seek, then war is what you shall have. Zevan Dominion, you have awakened a storm. And now, you will regret the day you murdered one of us." The galaxy, once so quick to mock humanity's diplomacy, now trembled. Even those who had doubted humanity's resolve could see it. Something had changed. The greatest advocates for peace had been pushed too far, And as humanity's fleets began to mobilize, the galaxy could only watch, waiting to see what kind of wrath the architects of peace would unleash. The galaxy had always considered itself accustomed to war. Empires had risen and fallen on the strength of their fleets, and countless civilizations bore scars from battles that spanned centuries. Yet, as humanity's war machine began to move, it became clear that the galaxy had never seen anything like what was coming. Humanity had been underestimated for centuries. Their reputation as peacekeepers had overshadowed their history, one forged in the fires of conflict. On Earth, peace had been hard won, born from centuries of devastating wars that demanded unparalleled innovation and strategy. Those lessons had not been forgotten, they had merely been hidden beneath the veneer of diplomacy. When humanity declared war on the Zavan Dominion, it was not with the bluster of conquest or the desperation of survival. It was with cold, calculated fury. The Prime Minister's promise echoed through every command center, every warship. You will regret the day you murdered one of us. The Zevans, arrogant and overconfident, met the full fury of a species that had spent centuries perfecting peace and preparing for its failure. Humanity's rise from peace to total war was executed with an eerie precision that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The fleets that had long been dormant, hidden under the guise of neutrality, sprang into action with a cold, almost mechanical efficiency. Battlecruisers, carriers, and dreadnoughts, once thought to be mere relics of a forgotten age of conflict, emerged from concealed orbital docks with terrifying purpose. Their massive hulls gleamed with the light of distant stars, a fleet not born of desperation, but of meticulous design. The galaxy, accustomed to seeing other empires throw themselves into battle with overwhelming numbers or brute force, now witnessed something wholly different. Humanity's military was not a force of chaos, it was a force of absolute control. The scale of the fleet was indeed immense, but what truly set it apart was the unyielding precision with which it operated. Each ship, each weapon, each resource was deployed not in an undisciplined rush, but with the calculated touch of a master architect designing a battlefield. Ships moved in perfect harmony, each vessel acting as part of a greater plan rather than an independent unit. Humanity's fleet didn't just deploy, they coordinated, every action building on the last, every asset accounted for down to the last drop of fuel, every strategy fine-tuned to ensure maximum impact. In mere hours, Earth's forces had mobilized a war machine so formidable that the galaxy trembled at its potential. The Zevans, accustomed to brute strength and numbers, were taken completely by surprise. They had assumed that humanity, a species known for its diplomatic efforts, had no stomach for war. They had failed to understand that the humans who spoke of peace were the very same humans who had honed the art of war over centuries of bitter conflict. For them, the lessons of the past had not been forgotten. They had been carefully preserved, like a blade in the hands of a master. The first to witness this devastating new reality were the outlying Zevan-held worlds in the Solara cluster. They had no idea what was coming. Nithra, the Zevan stronghold at the heart of the cluster, had been a symbol of invulnerability for the Dominion. It had been fortified for decades, a testament to Zevan pride and their belief that their defenses were insurmountable. Its towering orbital stations, its vast planetary shields, and its ground forces, well known for their brutal efficiency, had long made it a planet that no one dared to challenge. But when humanity's war machine arrived, the Zevans realized how fundamentally wrong they had been. Humanity did not attack Nithra in the expected fashion. There was no grand display of raw force, no reckless assault aimed at simply overwhelming the defenses. No, humanity approached this like a surgeon wielding a scalpel, cold, precise, and utterly without mercy. They knew that brute strength would not win this fight. Instead, they employed a method that would not just defeat the Zevans, but break them on a psychological level as well. The first strike came not from the ground, but from above. Orbital drones descended en masse, their AI systems working in flawless synchronization. In a matter of hours, the planetary shield grid was dismantled. These drones, seemingly unassuming in their design, were capable of precise and deliberate actions, each one targeting a weak point in the defense. There was no wasted energy, no unnecessary movements. The Zevans watched helplessly as their most vital defense system was shattered. Then the high-orbit precision strikes began. Humanity's fleet didn't just throw bombs haphazardly, they aimed with surgical precision, targeting critical military installations and industrial hubs with pinpoint accuracy. The Zevans, who had prided themselves on their technological prowess, found themselves helpless against a force that understood the essence of warfare in a way they had never imagined. It wasn't just the technology that shocked the Zevans, it was the relentlessness of humanity's tactics. Humans didn't rush in. They didn't fight with desperation or fury. They moved with a chilling calmness, exploiting every weakness and adapting to every countermeasure with an almost inhuman efficiency. When the Zevans adjusted their defenses, humanity already had the next move planned, having anticipated every possible scenario. It was a war not of reactions, but of anticipations. Every move by the Zevans was countered before they even made it. Ground combat, which had always been the Zevans' domain, became a deadly game of cat and mouse. Humanity's soldiers, clad in exosuits with adaptive armor and AI-enhanced targeting systems, were not just equipped for battle, they were designed for it. Their tactics combined creativity with cold logic, seamlessly shifting from one strategy to another. The Zevans, known for their fearsome ferocity in combat, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. In less than 6 days, Nithra had fallen. The fortress world, once considered unconquerable, lay in ruins. The Zevan warlords who had mocked humanity's so-called peacekeeping efforts were either captured or killed. But it was not the bodies of the dead that haunted the surviving Zevans. It was the image of their shattered empire, a realization that they had not been defeated by a superior enemy, but by the very concept of precision itself. Humanity had not simply attacked Nithra. They had dismantled the very concept of invulnerability. Humanity had revealed something the galaxy had never truly understood before. They were not just warriors, they were architects of destruction. Every soldier was a force in itself, an agent of calculated annihilation. The galaxy, which had long assumed that sheer numbers or brute force could win wars, now faced the devastating truth. Humanity's genius lay not in overwhelming might, but in their unparalleled ability to dismantle, to control, and to destroy with the precision of a master craftsman. In war, there was nothing humanity could not break. Their brilliance was not in strength, but in the efficiency with which they wielded it. Their tactics, while seemingly cold and unfeeling, were designed with a purpose, something deeper than the will to conquer. Humanity fought not just to win. They fought to show their enemies that when they went to war, they would not just defeat you, they would take the war out of you. Humanity's admiral message to the Zevan leadership was direct. You are not fighting for victory anymore. You are fighting for survival, and you are losing. Crean stared at the reports coming in from Nithra, his face a mask of feigned indifference as his officers frantically detailed the scale of the disaster. He dismissed them with a wave of his hand, his voice cutting through the room. A minor setback, he declared, his tone resolute. Fortress worlds can be rebuilt, fleets replenished. Humanity may have caught us off guard, but they are still nothing more than a nuisance, a species that mistakes calculated precision for true strength. They will learn soon enough. Yet, as he retreated to the solitude of his command chamber, the bravado began to falter. The reports replayed in his mind. The precision strikes, the dismantling of the shield grid, the systematic unraveling of his empire's strongest defenses. It wasn't just the scale of the loss that gnawed at him, it was the method. It was as if humanity had dissected the very essence of their strength and found every flaw, every crack in their armor. And then there were the words spoken with chilling conviction by humanity's Prime Minister. You will regret the day you murdered one of us. They echoed in Crean's thoughts like a relentless drumbeat, growing louder with each moment of silence. For the first time in his long career, a cold dread began to creep into his mind. The loss of Nithra wasn't just a defeat, it was a statement, a declaration that humanity wasn't fighting for territory or conquest, they were fighting for something far more profound. As he sat alone, his hands clenched tightly, Crean couldn't shake the thought that he had awakened a force beyond his understanding. For the first time, a whisper of doubt crossed his mind. We fortified that location over decades, yet they dismantled it in days. What monstrosity have I unleashed upon us? What have I done? Humanity's war strategy transcended the mere clash of weapons and ships. They understood that war was fought not only on battlefields, but in supply chains, communication networks, and, most devastatingly, the minds of their enemies. They didn't just engage in psychological warfare, they redefined it, creating methods the galaxy had never conceived possible. One such masterstroke unfolded in the desolate stretch of the Treachery expanse, a vital trade and military corridor for the Zevan Dominion. Hundreds of Zevan fleets patrolled the territory, their presence a testament to the Dominion's dominance. These fleets were considered impenetrable, their supply chains and communication networks robust enough to withstand any direct assault. But humanity had no intention of attacking directly. Humanity struck not with overwhelming force, but with calculated precision. Their cybernetic drones descended on the Zevan fleets. These drones were no ordinary machines. Each was a marvel of human ingenuity, equipped with adaptive AI and designed for silent infiltration. They slipped past Zevan defenses, exploiting vulnerabilities the Dominion hadn't even known existed. In a matter of hours, the fleets were crippled. Engines sputtered to a halt, leaving ships adrift. Communications networks were scrambled, rendering commanders unable to coordinate. Weapons systems, once the pride of the Zevan Navy, became little more than useless ornaments. But humanity's precision did not end there. They understood that isolated victories were meaningless without severing the lifelines of their enemy. As the Zevan fleet drifted helplessly in the Treachery expanse, humanity enacted the second phase of their strategy, the total disruption of the Dominion's supply chain. Before the Zevans could even consider sending reinforcements, humanity struck at the trade routes and supply depots that sustained the fleets in the expanse. Cybernetic drones and stealth frigates intercepted every convoy, disabling their engines and rendering their cargo useless. Strategic outposts along the route were raided or neutralized, leaving no point of resupply intact. Human warships took up strategic positions along the corridor, creating an impenetrable blockade. Any Zevan vessel attempting to breach the perimeter was swiftly intercepted and disabled. The galaxy watched in awe as humanity turned the vast expanse of space into a trap, one from which the Zevans could not escape. Cut off from aid and surrounded by an unyielding enemy, the Zevan fleet in the expanse was left to fend for itself. They braced for the killing blow, expecting humanity to capitalize on their helplessness with a merciless assault. But humanity did nothing. Their warships maintained a calculated distance, watching, waiting. The silence was deafening. Every soldier on those ships began to ask the same question. Why haven't they attacked? What are they waiting for? At first, the Zevans tried to re-establish order. Crews worked frantically to repair their systems, only to find themselves thwarted at every turn by humanity's cybernetic sabotage. Days passed. Supplies dwindled. The once proud Zevan soldiers, conditioned to see themselves as invincible, began to feel the creeping fingers of despair. Days turned into weeks. Supplies dwindled. Rations ran out. Soldiers once known for their discipline and ferocity now descended into desperation. Hunger clawed at their stomachs and fear gnawed at their minds. The true blow came not from starvation, but from the psychological torment of waiting. Every moment was a test of endurance, every hour a reminder of their helplessness. The proud Zevan soldiers, conditioned to instill fear, now felt it for the first time in their lives. The human ships remained ominously stationary, their presence a constant reminder of the Zevans' helplessness. The Zevan commanders tried to maintain morale, issuing proclamations of defiance over the few functional comm channels. But even their voices wavered as the days stretched into weeks. The sight of human warships, motionless and unyielding, became a symbol of their impending doom. When the fleets were on the brink of succumbing, when their minds and bodies were broken, human boarding parties finally arrived. They found skeletal soldiers, their faces hollow and eyes sunken, too weak to resist. What happened next sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Humanity didn't execute the Zevans. Instead, they broadcast their rescue. The images of gaunt, broken soldiers being carried from their ships by human hands were transmitted to every corner of Dominion space. These were not the proud warriors the Zevan Dominion had promised its citizens. These were defeated men and women, stripped of their strength and reduced to shadows of themselves, not by weapons, but by fear and starvation. In that moment, the galaxy understood the truth. Humanity didn't just fight wars, they dismantled them, piece by piece, until nothing remained of their enemy's will to fight. They didn't need to kill to conquer. Their precision, their patience, and their unyielding resolve made them something far more terrifying. And so, in the silence of the Trellon expanse, humanity's message echoed across the stars. We do not fight to conquer. We fight to remind you of the cost of war. And no one bears that cost more heavily than those who provoke it. Far away from the Trellon expanse, deep within the fortified chambers of the Zavan Dominion's capital, Supreme Commander Crean sat in a council meeting that had devolved into chaos. Reports of the Trellon disaster poured in, each one more damning than the last. The galaxy-wide broadcast of the defeated Zevan fleet was playing on the central holoscreen, the gaunt faces of his soldiers etched with despair and shame for all to see. Crean's clawed hand gripped the edge of the obsidian council table so tightly that cracks began to form beneath his palm. His piercing eyes, usually filled with the fierce resolve that had earned him his rank, flickered with something new. Fear. "Their mercy is worse than their wrath," one of his advisors hissed, pacing the room. "They let our soldiers live, but what remains of them is less than men. Hollow eyes, trembling hands, whispers of nightmares, they haunt me even now. Sir, they are here not to defeat us, but to break us, body and soul." "Enough!" Crean snapped, but his voice lacked the same force. The words hung in the air like an admission of guilt. Deep inside, Crean was gripped by a terrible realization. Humanity's tactics were not just designed to win battles, they were designed to crush the spirit of their enemies. The Zevans, who had built their empire on the principles of dominance and fear, were now the ones being dominated and feared. In the chambers of the Galactic Concord, the broadcast of humanity's tactics played out in chilling silence. Delegates from across the galaxy sat transfixed, their reactions a mix of awe, fear, and unease. For centuries, humanity's role as peacekeepers had divided opinions within the Concord. Some had respected their relentless commitment to diplomacy, seeing it as a strength that held the volatile galaxy together. Others had scoffed, viewing their reluctance to engage in war as cowardice masquerading as principle. But now, both groups found themselves shaken. "They dismantled the Zevans without firing a single shot," an ambassador whispered, his body shifting in a gesture of deep unease. "It is not just their weapons," the Zoltian envoy added, his mandibles clicking nervously. "They turned war itself into a weapon of the mind. They fight as if the battlefield is merely one front of many, and they do so with chilling precision." The Sulin ambassador, long a vocal supporter of humanity's peacekeeping efforts, exhaled slowly. "For centuries, they have carried the burden of preventing war among us. Perhaps we never realized why they sought peace so fervently." He gestured to the recording of broken Zevan soldiers. "This is what happens when the galaxy forces them to abandon peace. And now we must wonder, what might they become if provoked further?" The chamber fell silent. Even the staunchest critics of humanity were left with a lingering thought. The galaxy's greatest peacekeepers had revealed their capacity for a war so precise and psychological that it reshaped the very definition of conflict. And none could deny the shadow it cast over them all. The final blow came 3 months into the campaign. Humanity's fleets converged on Zavara Prime, the heart of the Dominion and the site of the massacre that had sparked the war. The planet's defenses were formidable, its orbital stations bristling with weaponry. But humanity was not interested in a drawn-out siege. The assault began with the deployment of planetary eradication ordnance, weapons designed not to destroy cities but to render entire regions uninhabitable. EMP pulses disabled planetary defenses, while atmospheric disruptors unleashed storms that grounded Zevan air support. Humanity's ground forces landed shortly after, their approach unrelenting and precise. They made no distinction between soldiers and warlords, dismantling the Dominion's leadership in a matter of hours. As Zavara Prime fell, Crean retreated into his fortified command bunker. The once proud warlord, who had dismissed humanity as weak and naive, now sat in silence, his thoughts consumed by the devastation he had brought upon his people, the weight of his past decisions pressing down on him like a collapsing star. His mind wandered back to the day he had first met the human diplomat, Elan, the one he had so casually dismissed as weak and naive. He remembered her words, her calm, yet unwavering plea for peace, and the way she had tried to bridge the unbridgeable, even with death staring her in the face. In his mind's eye, he saw her once more, standing before him in the grand hall, speaking with the same conviction that had infuriated him in the first place. She had offered him a future of peace, of coexistence. She had pleaded, appealed to his sense of honor, to the very values he had once held dear as a warrior. He had mocked her, belittled her, dismissed her as a coward hiding behind treaties. The irony of her peaceful request, only to meet the brutality of his own command, now made his gut twist in remorse. Crean couldn't help but feel the sting of regret. She had been right. They had warned him. And worse, he had murdered her and her delegation in cold blood, their deaths broadcast to the galaxy. Her voice, once a beacon of calm, now echoed in his mind. Her face, her determined, resolute face, flashed before his eyes. The deaths of those humans had been swift, but Crean hadn't expected the fury that followed. He hadn't understood that the humanity he so scorned would fight, not for conquest, but for the lives of those they had lost. They were coming for him now, for the price of his mistake. He could still hear her final words in his mind, the way she had faced him with quiet dignity. "You will regret this." Crean whispered to the empty room, "I should have listened." But it was far too late for apologies. When the human forces breached the bunker, Crean's guards surrendered without a fight. The warlord himself stood defiant, though his trembling hands betrayed his fear. The human commander, a man whose calm demeanor concealed the storm beneath, stepped forward, his gaze locked with Crean's, cold and unyielding. Crean lifted his chin. "You've won. Slaughter me and be done with it." "This isn't destruction," the commander replied, his tone low and measured. "This is justice. For Elan, for every innocent life you took. You wanted to see the monster we fear becoming. Now you've met it." In the aftermath of the war, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The Grand Chamber, a sprawling arena where the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful species gathered, buzzed with tension. The holographic projections of various leaders shimmered across the room, each one voicing their thoughts on what had transpired. "I was wrong," the Zoltian ambassador said, his voice carrying the weight of his disbelief. "I underestimated them, mocked their peace efforts, thinking it was their cowardice. Now I know the truth. Humanity's wrath is not something to be provoked." The Sulin diplomat nodded with quiet satisfaction. "I told you so." The Zoltian's gaze fell to the ground, unable to argue. The galaxy, once so confident that humanity's peacekeeping efforts were nothing more than a facade, now understood the terrifying truth. There was no greater force than the human will when pushed to the edge. The galaxy's perception of humanity was forever altered. They were no longer seen as peacekeepers, but as a force of nature, unstoppable, unrelenting, and methodical when provoked. They were the galaxy's greatest advocates for peace, not because they were weak, but because they alone understood the true cost of conflict. To provoke humanity was to awaken the storm, a storm that spared nothing in its path. Other species whispered of their wrath and mercy in the same breath, using it as a cautionary tale for generations to come. Humanity, meanwhile, returned to their peacekeeping role. But the memory of the war, the starving soldiers, the haunting broadcasts, the precise strikes, remained. It was a grim reminder of what they were capable of when diplomacy failed. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson. Humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their fleets. It was their ability to wield war like a scalpel, cutting deep and leaving scars that would never heal. Yet they showed that even in their wrath, they could choose to save, ensuring that their mercy was as unforgettable as their power.